Hi, I'm Steve Brown, writer, anthropologist, traveler, and awesome dad. This is the beginning of my new series, which I have just decided to call Libertarian Heretic. The working title was Sane Libertarianism, for reasons we will get into in just a second. Now, the reason I've started this is because, by all rights, this should be the libertarian moment. The left has been taken over by crazies, seriously crazy people. The Democratic Party itself has been taken over by its most extreme elements on the hard left. The Republican Party is in disarray, with the results we shall no doubt see in time, but haven't seen yet due to the absurd improbability of the election of Donald Trump as president. We have something to offer. We had a philosophy of freedom, something that justified what in the hearts of all decent people know is right, that freedom is a good thing, that people get along best when they're free to pursue their own interests with very, very minimal governing. Now, there is a story that one of the prominent conservative commenters whose attitude towards libertarianism could be described as sympathetic but somewhat skeptical, actually visited and spent some time at a libertarian conference, I believe in D.C., not sure though. And his reaction was, nowhere else are such substantive issues being so seriously discussed. Pause. And that pause, if not pregnant, had definitely been fooled around with some. Unfortunately, half the people doing the discussing are functionally insane. Now, if you are a libertarian, right about now, you're either reacting with, in indignation and high dudgeon. What's low dudgeon? Anyone know? But at any rate, or you're nodding your head like this. So you are the people I'm talking to. Those of you who are nodding your heads ruefully. There's a lot of us out there, people who are sympathetic towards the ideas, even wear the label because basically we haven't got anything else to wear, and nonetheless are uneasy about a lot of the craziness within libertarianism, the libertarian movement. Now, I'll tell you this. I've been involved in the libertarian movement for 40 plus years, since I was quite a young man. And since then, okay, so I've watched it a lot. The defining point in my life, the defining years of my life was in 1991 when I went to live in Poland in the countries of the former Soviet Union, just recovering from tyranny, and I got involved with local libertarians in their Yugoslavia, in Belarus, in Lithuania, places like that, where people were actually dealing with the problems of converting from a command economy to a market economy and rebuilding states which are reasonably free, given the sad history of that continent. They're certainly better than what happened before. Yes, I know there are some people who claim that, no, nothing's really changed. That's bullshit. Of course things have changed. On the other hand, there are new challenges. There is a resurgent Russian Empire. There is the fantasy ideology of an expanding Islamic caliphate. There's all kinds of challenges to freedom. But these are the times when libertarianism should be flourishing. These are problems to be addressed. These are, coming up with answers to the age-old questions of how do human beings in very large groups get along reasonably well with each other. Now, I suppose before I get any further along in this, I ought to address the question of what is a libertarian. Well, some of the craziness about libertarianism comes from something called the NAP, the non-aggression principle, which is originally, I believe it started out basically, it might have been Dave Nolan, I don't know, as as a thumbnail sketch of what libertarianism is, a quick summation for people who the ideas are new to. The non-aggression principle, which holds that it is wrong for any human being to initiate the use of force against another. Now, the non-aggression, which as it stands, as a quick summary, is pretty good, but it's in practice a bit more complicated than that. There's, of course, the question of fraud, which is why some people say no one may initiate the use of force or fraud against someone else. There's all kinds of complicated ways that it applies in the interaction of human beings. But some people don't admit the complexity of the issue and say, it's the nap, it's this. The late Murray Rothbard actually defended blackmail, for example. He said, well, all you're doing is, offering to withhold information from the market for a price. I think, how well is that going to fly? There are questions of libel and such. And again, there are people who say, oh, well, libel isn't force, so lie all you like. We'll deal with this and a lot of other things. But first of all, I think I should tell you where I'm coming from. My definition of libertarianism creates a fairly big tent for the people who want to be involved in it, which is just this. One way of looking at it is a libertarian is someone who wants to push the envelope of liberty in society to the furthest extent possible that it is consistent within a reasonably orderly society, and a pretty loose definition of what reasonably orderly is. Another way of putting this might be is that a libertarian is someone who believes that human relationships should be voluntary to the greatest extent possible, which would make libertarianism the study of the proposition the greatest extent possible. So I'm going to talk about theories. I'm going to start out with probably with something about the origin of the state. I'm going to talk about the place of anarchists in the movement, for example. I have worn the label anarchist myself, but I have a problem with it. They're just not radical enough for me. That's a joke. Sort of. Or maybe not. At any rate, my contention, my basic contention here is, as I said, this should be the libertarian moment, and we're blowing it. A lot of it is because a lot of libertarians are personally off-putting. Another is that, as I like to point out, this movement is theory-heavy and experience-light. And theory without experience drifts into fantasy, and we'll examine some of those fantasies. But experience without theory just drifts. I'm going to talk about some of the experience that has shaped my thinking over the last 40 years. As I said, a great deal of it gathered in Eastern Europe between the years of 1991 and 2004. But after that, coming back and becoming a rural journalist in small towns, covering city government and county government. I will talk a bit about that. That was a bit of an eye-opener also. I'm going to talk about organizational principles and things. Why, for example, friends of mine in state parties, such as Florida, have reported on how their party has been taken over by head cases, and some of them fairly sinister ones, because, like vetting and party discipline is so authoritarian. I'm going to talk, I think, about reasonable people who think that something is happening in this country. Now, I've dealt with some of what I think is happening in my Ruling Class Crisis series, which I will refer you to, but this is the start of a new series on a somewhat different tangent. So, with that, I think I should try to keep these things fairly short. So I'm going to bid you good day and ask you to watch with bated breath this space for further developments. Good day.